Pleased to see you again. I thought that seminar lecture from Professor Cyril was quite sensational. So thank you for that. I would ask for you to pause for a minute. Now imagine a corporate network comprising various assets, as we talked about in the first seminar. Imagine a user base of about 5,000 people. Imagine this corporate network in multiple locations. Imagine there are no geographical boundaries. Imagine also that some of these assets are in cloud, not physical hosting. Imagine that you're tasked to monitor what users do, the behavior, and also to protect them. Imagine you're also tasked to find out A, the vulnerabilities that may exist, whether in the controls that protect this network, or also in the weaknesses of lack of policies and procedure. Imagine also you're also supposed to know about the compromise path, how the threats can manifest and exploit those vulnerabilities that exist, and also what the threat actors are, their capabilities, their motivations, and also where they fit. Imagine also that you are tasked also in making sure that if you were hacked or attacked, you provide the right compensating controls, the right forensics, the right detection, the right response to that within mean time to response, or say 1 day at max. Imagine you are monitoring a multinational insurance company handling high value bearing transactions. And your task is also to make sure that that particular corporation is protected. Imagine you're monitoring an online e-commerce company that has no geographic boundaries. Transactions are millions and billions of transactions, both user and financial transactions, cut across various geographies. Their task is to make sure that they're protected, transactions are valid and legitimate. Also, who can also intercept those and making sure you detect those if they happen and provide the right response swiftly. Imagine your task is to work in government agencies that protect our citizens, both those within the country and those abroad. Imagine you need to know who the allies are and who the enemies are. Imagine also you are tasked to understand who could be interested in those critical national infrastructures, who may want to attack them, what methods, what mechanisms they may want to use. Imagine also you are tasked to understand their methodology, where they localize, the capability, what could motivate them. Imagine that if it does happen, you are equally tasked to respond swiftly and make sure that services are brought to life. And that could also have some consequential human impact in terms of loss of human life. That is not such a trivial task. But that's not the problem. There are possibly three possible ways you can do. You could either hire people, recruit them, teach them how the art of monitoring is, make sure they have awareness, understanding, comprehension, protection to detect those, to repair those. You could go and hire or procure an outsource service, what IT providers do. And you could do both of those, which is hybrid. But that's still not the problem. The problem is very many things have been branded as CyberSA. Very many things have service wrappers that look and feel but doesn't protect. The problem is we have branded and categorized things that are not part of situational awareness that would not solve those problems as though they would. And part of this problem is there are no standardization. There isn't a standard that you would follow that would allow you to repeat, mechanize this, industrialize it, and therefore you can then measure the quality of service and measure the aperture of what those detect and what they don't. What we recognize is there are a number of other contributors, other people doing research in this area, and producing things on their own right, which I call good. But every single person is doing their own thing in their way and based on their understanding, and we lack knowledge because this is all equally a very new and a novel area. We also recognize that there are requirements written in various literature about what is and what isn't. We also recognize there are building blocks that can enable us, but what we don't not have currently is a standard that would allow coherent, consistent, measurable, repeated, industrialized, and even the evolution to productizing those into products. Standards allow us to make things consistent, allows us to measure, is a foundation that we can leverage on. For example, in very mature sciences like chemistry, 2 atoms of water, 2 atoms of hydrogen, and 1 atom of oxygen, whenever you combine those, in those conditions, you get water. In computer science also, the word science, we know there are standards like 802.11g and whatever. If you plug in your RJ45 into a computer, the link light comes up. These are repeated things, therefore you can measure a product A of that type to another product B to know what efficiency is and what the quality of service and which one is better. So you can compare empirically with those. That's what standards give you. Standards give you something you can measure. Standards give you things you can repeat. Standards give you things you can industrialize. Standards gives you the terms and matrices to evaluate those. They do exist in a broader sense in terms of computer science, but they don't exist in terms of cyber situational awareness. And very many things have, because of that, very many things have been categorized into things that they don't or do not do very well. What we're doing in terms of bringing these together is trying to say there are models that exist. Most of those models are abstract models. So the first thing you do is to look at the abstract models and find a way you could instantiate those models so that those models can become one of the models that would be in the Artifactory that somebody else can use to also assess what exists. So there are a number of things that exist. Also, the problem also is there isn't a way to evaluate, assess those things that exist, and to be able to quantify where, what, and what they do. Therefore, what you're trying to do is the things that already exist, where do they fit in? The things that do not exist, but then there is a gap. That allows you to find the gap, allows you to evaluate what exists, allows you to also then move future to look at where the emphasis and focus would be. That's what the model tries to do. So, if you start from the top left-hand corner, we do have a number of assets that we hold, our handheld devices, the Blackberries, the computers, the servers, name them. These, on their own, produce events, log. They show you what we call symptomatic things that are localized that they can understand in terms of the log they produce if there's an interaction. So that's our level 0, where it is minimal data, minimal knowledge, information, so to speak. And then you get to the level 1, where those pieces of metadata information can be analyzed by the controls to give you some level of information. So these are things like to do with your intrusion detection systems, things to do with your firewalls, things to do with your cryptos, and various other things. What also they give you most times are localized information. So they can tell you what has happened in a localized very into the environment in which they can only observe traffic or they see things. So those collection aspects would then allow you to use a number of analysis tools to then determine what has gone wrong. So the collection aspect allows you to do cross-correlation and correlation of the disparate information that you fuse together into a particular collection environment. It also allows you to collect things that are not just localized, but things that you are interested about. So it may well be GPRS information, or radar information, or tracking information. Allows you also to aggregate external intelligence feeds that you receive from various sources. So that allows us to have a wider view, so to speak, a much broader view, a picture of what is going on within, and not just within that environment, but in multiple environments. I.e., you might be monitoring a network, which is a corporate network, for example, but then being able to ingest public or what we regard as either restricted intel or vendor intel, and use that also to augment the picture and do analysis across those external intelligence feed and the ones that your controls have produced, gives you a wider picture. So you begin to look at how you have been, either the attempts that you see, the piece of information that you see in your network, how it's related to the wider world. So the intels who have their IOCs, which we call it indicators of compromise, and then you begin to find out maybe you are even already being compromised because one of your systems is becoming out state command and control on the botnet. So allowing that will give you a bigger picture in the collection that then allows you to man intelligence and then be able to quantify how that manifests in the environment you're monitoring. So if you move forward to your level 2, level 2 allows you to not just only the awareness of what it is, it gives you a richer picture for you to understand the likelihood of that particular thing materializing. Also gives you a broader view of what else is happening on the I don't know, things that go under the radar. So when you do profiling and thresholding, you find that there's a lot of things that get subsumed in the noise quadrant. So what you want to do is to look at those aspects and also look at them in a wider context, and then you find that you have a richer picture of what is happening, the situational awareness of their entire environment and how that impacts what's going on in the wider world. There are a number of tools you can use in that space, or the analysis space. So you can do correlation by time, temporal. You can do multi-dimensional space. You can also do it based on known intel to say, okay, what is it that we are seeing at this time t at 11:09 BHT? What is happening with all of these various moving parts, dynamically moving complex environment, and man that against the external intelligence that you receive, and you'll be able to get a richer picture of what is happening and how you could actually, if you wanted to mitigate that, how you could also mitigate that. It may well be that when you analyze this with richer intel, you find that this particular piece of IOC is already embedded in your estate. So you may need a tear-down approach. You may need to pull the plug, so to speak. It may be to localize system because it starts to make sense. It starts to give you a richer picture rather than the isolated environment you had before. But also, employing those tools and analysis that allow you to look at the various other things that did not make sense on their own, but make sense in a wider context. So you start to link how the interactions and how the various atomic rules, when you combine those together, you get a richer belief system, a richer information that allow you to isolate the incident, or at least detect what the incident is. The model allows you also that if whilst you are doing this, if there's a new piece of information that comes in, the model allows you also to put those new information into the analysis and then reanalyze it so you get bigger picture. Say for example, a riot kicks off in a particular place. You would know what's happening within that time t, but what you may not know is that they may be using another medium to propagate those and having a stage in the next hour that they would carry out a bigger one. So if you do get that information, you put it into your model. The model allows you to know that in the next hour they want to do even a bigger one, and this is the geography they're trying to plan it. This is where that unrest is going to happen. So it gives you those pictures that would allow you to first detect what it is, understand what the future things are, what they're planning to do in future, and how you can address those situations. So again, when you get evidence, what if you were in a situation where it's very unreliable, so you get conflicting evidence. So the evidence that the sensors produce are conflicting. How do you reconcile those? How do you analyze when it is even complementary? So that it's complementary doesn't mean that it's truth. So there are situations where you get complementary evidence from multiple sensors, complementary evidence from multiple intel. That in this one does not make the precision higher. It just means that you need to look at that a lot more closely. But the bigger problem comes when you have conflicting or incomplete. There are times you have incomplete evidence about certain things. So the model should still allow you to reason with the incomplete jigsaw puzzles, so to speak. This still makes sense on what the situation is currently and what it could likely evolve into. So the piece on the level 3 is how do you then look at prediction aspect? How do you predict based on the things you already know? How do you predict that in the next 2 hours this is the evolution of this particular incident? Or how do you also, without having an incident, how do you predict that these are the kind of mechanisms or the models or the skill set that the threats will use? So it allows you now to then look at the future things, what the likelihood are going to be, which areas of interest, what mechanisms they might exploit, what type of algorithm they might use. So that's what the prediction aspect allows you. So you can now start to make predictions because you have the pictures that you have drawn from your analysis and you've understood the various mechanisms they've used in the past. You understand the tactics they've used. You understand the psychology of this particular group. So what you can then decide to do is then model what the prediction will be. What are the future states? What are the things going to happen? So what this model also allows you is that human in the loop, the decision-making aspect, the cognition, and the skills you need for such people to understand those information and those intelligence that are coming. So it leads you to the decision aspect of the skills they might need, the people, the experience, and also the talent that you need for such decision making to happen. And also the level of accuracy you need. So it's not just the decision, but also what gave rise to those decisions, why is those decisions, why are they recommending those? So these are the things that will go on in your decision making. And the type of people that make the decision are people who are experiencing who have worked in that particular space for a longer time, who also have those intelligence that you need. Carry the analysis, also make meaning of the analysis. So the analysis in itself may not give you enough, but what you want is also to substantiate those based on other clues and cues and prompts. So it takes you to the resolution. So you've already seen the incident and you know that something's going to happen in the next few minutes. What you want is also to reduce the aperture between that detection and response. So you want to also be able to provide the right response. But what it does mean is that you need to, first of all, to try actors. So test what it is, assess what they're giving to you, investigate those, and also prioritize. So it may well mean that you will prioritize what is interesting within those piece of information you've got, or what is interesting within those sort of things you're seeing. So based on that, you classify where you apply the various responses back to, so that you mitigate those in real time. Not only that, but also to stop those evolving into future states. And as you see below here, there is those aspects of the coordination and aspects that takes you to respond. So respond is then having actionable things to respond against the incident, to respond against the particular incident that happens, so that you can contain, control, and counter it. So any of those response may not necessarily be binary. It may be a chain of response you carry out. So one might be, okay, to contain it to a level so that you protect the business and have the business running. But another case may well be based on the risk appetite, and risk tolerance is also to just control it in the sense where you stop the business, but make sure that there are no future compromises going on. And it may well mean that it would impact your business because your business might go offline. But these are a series of things that would go within both the coordination and the response, including the decision making. So you would have known the course of action, and based on the course of action, you analyze the evidence you've got, how accurate it is, and understand where those parameters have come from, understand who the threat agents are, the threat actors, what capabilities, and based on those, you then provide the right response. What we, in conclusion, what this is trying to say is that we recognize that cyber situational awareness is a multidisciplinary specialism. It cuts across various aspects, human factor, cognition. We need a number of scientists in various areas, so you may be cyber experts or HCI. It may well be that we leverage on complexity theories or big data science. But what we're trying to say is that it's a multidisciplinary area that involves all of us here, and if not wider. But also, we are dealing with a multi-dimensional problem, a problem that is not one localized area. This problem, as I explained in my initial analogies, can also be a corporate network, it can be an insurance firm, it can be an online business, it can be our defense and the military. So being able to detect these things on time, being able to control them in terms of the preventative and protection, and being able to also respond isn't something that one singular team or one singular person. You do need to understand what the even underlying technologies are in order to do that. You need to understand the intelligence that's been thrown at them. You need to understand the various aspects of the threat, the vulnerabilities. You also need to understand where these things are coming from in terms of geolocations and geographies of those various things. Again, this is not quite traditional where it is very static. These are things that are quite dynamic in nature. So people can access things from various geographies, various time zones. Therefore, you're not expecting those to be static in the sense that it's only going to come 9 o'clock in the morning from GMT or BST. It could well be that you have overseas connection. Your agencies could be overseas and operating overseas. You need to make sure they're equally secure and protected. Therefore, the mechanism would allow you to deal with multi-dimensional problems, as we see, complex situations that often require pace, speed, and accuracy. And also, finally, it means that if we had a standard that could allow us to provide a blueprint, that then people can start to either design things based on those standards. It will become easier to handle some of these complexities because you're now relying on those standards. It becomes a lot manageable because you can industrialize those products because you now based on standards. It becomes measurable, which gives you better quality of service over the other. It then gives you into performance, which of those products then performs better than the other, which of these services perform better than the other. You can then look at how many of those are handled in terms of, say, you're looking at performance in terms of how many terabytes of data or event per second data they can handle. You can then start to measure things. So what we are calling is we need a type of standardization that allows us to build and that we can leverage on the building blocks that exist, we can leverage on the patterns and architecture that exist, but also then underpin that the future things, we can then start to build on those as the building block increases. And that's what we are calling for. Thank you.